Hello, monarchs and madmen. My name is TV Skyen, and welcome back to Boss Designs Dark Souls 2, where I don't think at this point that there's a lot left to be said. All that's left is to go and finish it. Sir Kylonic. With the greed hat on. Anyway, let me in. Yeah.
Hello from the other side.
You're a slow, heavy door, I get it. Let's do Dispelling Ring. Because I think I know who I'm gonna find down here. Someone who's been missing for a while. Someone who is obsessed with the throne. Whose entire interaction with us throughout the entire game has been an attempt to manipulate us in order to take this throne for themselves. The throne and the soul of the king. Hey, divine blessings. So, we have our helpers, if we need them. Bradley of the Old Guard. Benhart of Yugot. And the head of Vengarl. But I think for the moment I'll face this alone. Oh, so that's what you look like, is it?
Brave undead. You have proven yourself to me. Now, be one with the dark.
Hello, Nashandra. Is she summoning something, or are those things gonna hurt me? Oh, no, those are definitely hurting me. Okay. I can dispel them, okay. Whoa. Don't do a third of those. Whoa, yo. The last little child of dark. I should probably get rid of those life drainers, shouldn't I? Uh-oh, what's that? What's that?! Ah! No! Not when I was that close! Oh. I forgot to equip the king's ring, so now he's hostile. Jerk. Oh, hello. Did I completely miss you last time?
My journey is already complete. My name is Shanalot.
Shanalot.
The dragon gave me this name, for I was born with none. I was born of dragons, contrived by men. By ones who would cozen fate herself. They are the ones who created me. But they failed. I did not come out as intended. Fate would not be bested, and men were cursed once again. If you proceed, Nashandra will come after you, knowing that you will take the throne and link the fire. She covets the first flame and the great soul. Put Nashandra to rest.
So she was created by men, and she was supposed to be a cure, I guess. She was supposed to be the one who could deal with the curse, to uncurse humanity. As far as I can tell. But they didn't even give her a name. They gave her a role, a job, but they didn't give her a name. Hey! Jesus. That's an annoying attack. Well, she can take a hit. So, Nashandra is a Grim Reaper. Like, look at her. She's composed of bones. And she wields a scythe. She's a Grim Reaper. A representation of death. But with strange eons, even death may die. And it's appropriate that it's her.
Many monarchs have come and gone. One drowned in poison, another succumbed to flame. Still another slumbers in the realm of ice. Not one of them stood here. As you do now.
Aldia?
Of adversities. Give us your answer.
Yeah, oh! Hello, Vendrick's brother. Oh, okay. The Scholar of the First Sin. Yes, indeed. Oh, such mysteries you have plumbed, Aldia. Oh, that hurts. Oh, I'm dead. Okay, so that just charges up for a really, 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 really long time. Did I get Nashandra Soul? The fragments of the abyss of untold origin nourished their beings by the sides of would-be monarchs. Perhaps they were simply ordeals on the road to kinghood. One day the flames will fade and only darkness will remain. Unless, of course, an heir arrives. Wait, so if I have Nashandra's soul, then presumably I don't have to fight her again. So is this Nashandra now, or... Oh no. It's the head villain of the piece. Ow. I mean, it's not like I need that 90,000, so... Oh. And then he does that. I couldn't see him do it. Yeah, okay, the flames around him are damaging. Of course they are. Well, stop doing them then. Like, I kind of need to get close to hit you in the face. Uh-oh. Okay, so that, I dodged forward for that one. Damn it. Aldia is nothing but a head. He is nothing but thought. Nothing but inquiry. Nothing but questions in search of answers. Or perhaps, in his case, answers in search of questions. Which is the most dangerous mind of all. Well, arrows don't work on him. Okay, now it's that thing. What do I do about that? Okay, just dodge it. I thought it would be like a huge AoE. Damn it. Oh, okay. He does not take any damage on his body. Whew. Barely managed to dodge that one. And also not when he's wreathed in flames. That just seems to protect him. Oh, he's getting a little desperate now, is he? Damn it. Yeah, take that damage, old man. I compared him previously to Leonardo da Vinci. And he really is that.
I lost everything and remain here patiently. The throne will certainly receive you. But the question remains. Would you tell me? Light, dark, or something else entirely?
Or in effect, would you please trade me a thing for a thing? No? Oh, there is. Scythe-born, yeah, Scythe of Want, of course, Desire. The old one of the Abyss was reborn in death, split into minuscule fragments, and spread across the land. After regaining their shapes, they crawled forth, yearning for strong souls in search of greater power. Oh, Bow of Want. Light and dark are two sides of the same coin, much like the soul and the curse. The beings who presented themselves to those in search of kinghood were drawn to their awesome strength. Which is something that Future Sky is going to have to talk about, like the role of desire. Like, there's definitely something important to talk about there with the Throne of Want being what it is. So, the eagle-eyed viewers among you may have spotted that after beating Aldia, I did a very subtle, barely noticeable, really, little edit where I cut away from, well, from the ending of the game. Rest assured, we're still going to be doing that in this episode, but before we do, let's talk about the character designs of Nashandra, Aldia, and the Emerald Herald. And we'll start with Shanalot, whose role in this game is arguably greater and more impactful than either Nashandra, Aldia, or even Vendrick. Now, I've mentioned before that it seems, to me at least, to be possible to read Dark Souls 2 as a metaphor for the journey through life. This is a metaphor that lines up very nicely with my personal identity reading, but isn't necessarily contingent upon it. We begin the game as a completely unformed person, someone with no personality traits and no class or stats and no concept and absolutely no character customization. Our only way to exit this womb is a long, narrow, vertical slit through which we can see the light of the world peeking at us. And we are ushered out of that passage by three old ladies, midwives, who give us our first hints of an identity, who are the first to bring us into the world as not just a thing, but as a person, a character. Then we stumble bleary-eyed out into Majula and are given the first taste of the actual world, and one of the first NPCs that I imagine many players encounter is Shanalot, the Emerald Herald, standing alone by the bonfire, who tells us that she's been waiting for us. And it is through the Emerald Herald that we are given guidance about what to do. Bearer of the curse, seek misery, for misery will lead you to greater, stronger souls. Seek those whose names are unutterable, the four endowed with immense souls. Bearer of the curse, seek souls, larger, more powerful souls. Seek the king. That is the only way, lest this land swallow you whole, as it has so many others. But she is also one of the first and only characters in Dark Souls 2 to offer you help and comfort. It is she who uses the souls you gather to strengthen you. It's she who strengthens your Estus flask to keep you safe during combat. And she shows up at the major milestones of your journey, at Dranglake Castle, in the Undead Crypt, at the Dragon Eyrie, and at the Throne of Want. Unlike pretty much every other NPC you encounter, she is not deteriorating. She's not someone who fades into your life and then eventually, inevitably, fades back out of it again. Thinking of poor Lucatiel here. As she herself says, she will always be with you until hope has fully withered. And so in that sense, as your guide, as your mentor, as your source of comfort, and the one who helps to strengthen you against the challenges of life, the Emerald Herald can be seen as a kind of mother figure. You could also see her as a sister character, or if you are of a religious persuasion, you can see her as a when there was only one set of footprints in the sand, that was when I carried you style savior figure. Someone who doesn't actively help you, but whose guidance and kindness and unconditional love is the thing that carries you through all your challenges. However, outside of who she is to you, there is the question of who is she to herself. We know her, of course, only really as the Emerald Herald for the vast majority of the game. And that's actually kind of appropriate, because as she tells us, she was born without a name, only a job, only a purpose. She says she was born of dragons contrived by men, which I take to mean that she has dragon lineage, but she was created, brought into the world by men. And I think I can imagine which men men in particular she's talking about. There's definitely someone in this game who has an obsessive need to cousin fate herself. Cousin is a fun word, by the way. It means to trick or deceive someone, and nobody in Drang Lake is more obsessed with cheating fate than the scholar of the first sin. Anyway, Shanalot, who eventually gets that name from the dragon, presumably the ancient dragon at the Dragon's Eyrie, is born with no name and no personal identity as such. She's just born with a purpose, to somehow undo the undead curse. And as she puts it, she's a failed experiment in that regard. She's not a cure for the curse. No such thing can be cheated away from fate. And yet, she's the first and pretty much the only one to help us in Drang Lake. The only one to offer us guidance and comfort. She's the one who strengthens us and helps us overcome the challenges that we face, who points us in the right direction when we are lost, who shows up to encourage us along our path. And she has offered this help to who knows how many undead over and over and over again, offering her compassion to the bearers of the curse, until someone comes along who can do what she could not, what Vendrick could not. Take the throne and link the fire and save humanity from the scourge of the undead curse. Shanalot did not turn out the way she was intended. She didn't do what her erstwhile fathers wanted her to do, and yet she still found a way to succeed where they failed. Not by seeking the glory, not by chasing ancient mysteries or seeking a path to the throne herself, but by extending a hand to others in kindness and companionship and compassion. And yes, we get the sense from the feather that she gives us, and just from her personality in general, that she's someone who's looking for freedom from this fate that has been thrust upon her. Freedom, as she puts it, from the chains of fate. But in a game series where most of the characters are in some way defined by their ability to do violence upon others, there is something quietly revolutionary about achieving a goal that so many others have failed to reach, simply by being kind. Anyway, as for her character design itself, she's cute, and I like her. And also, she wears a cloak that she keeps up around her head for the vast majority of the game, and she's got hair that falls down over one eye, indicating that she's hiding some part of her identity from us, which indeed turns out to be the case. Plus, she's dressed in brown and green and general earthy tones, which generally speaking associates her with something gentler and more nurturing and kind than the many blacks and greys that dominate a place like Aldia's Keep or indeed Drang Lake Castle. Anyway, now let us turn our attention to Nashandra, the queen of King Vendrick, the queen of Drang Lake, the queen of desire, and the queen of death. Of course, Nashandra has two character designs. When we meet her as Queen of Drang Lake and our nominal ally, she's dressed all in resplendent white with golden accents, and white, of course, especially in Western cultures, is a color that's associated with virginity, purity, kindness, holiness, the light of heaven. And while her other character design is primarily identified with a lot of black, which is the stereotypical color of death in the West, white has a strong association with death as well. White is the color of the death shroud, the color of naked bones, and the typical color of a haunting ghost. In Nashandra's human form, her color coding is designed to induce ambiguity. She could be associated with purity and light, and she could be associated with death. In her boss form, on the other hand, the color coding is utterly unambiguous. Like, she's pitch black and covered in skulls, and she wields a scythe. There's not a lot to be confused about there. Nashandra is also probably the closest thing this game has to a primary antagonist. It is her manipulations that led Vendrick to turn away from Drang Lake and go into self-imposed isolation, leading to the downfall of Drang Lake with nobody on the throne and nobody willing and able to link the fire and potentially try to find some kind of cure for the undead curse. It is Nashandra who causes the invasion of the giants that has left so much of Drang Lake in absolute ruins. And in our relatively limited interactions with us, she's constantly trying to manipulate us or push us towards whatever will serve her particular ends, that being possession of the king's soul and access to the throne of want. She not so subtly encourages us to see ourselves as a replacement for King Vendrick, because he has hidden his soul away and she needs someone to go and find it for her. She is, however, not that much of an antagonist, ultimately. Like, she doesn't actively hinder our journey. She doesn't actively present any obstacles in our way. She's pretty much happy to just let us get on with what we were already doing anyway and not show up until the very end when we have what she wants and she thinks she can take it from us. It's the opposite of a more proactive antagonist like, say, Bowser, who's more than happy to swoop in and fight Mario personally every few levels. And that's kind of appropriate, because at least in the interpretation that we've been working with so far, there isn't really a central outside antagonist to our story. No looming final boss making for the final destination of our quest. Early on, it seemed like maybe there would be such a final boss, that King Vendrick would be a final boss in a similar vein to Lord Gwyn. But once they pulled the fake out that no, Vendrick is already dead, there wasn't another central figure, a central character in our story who stepped in to take that place. No, the central antagonist in my Dark Souls 2 story, at least, was and remained from the very start, the curse. Anyway, Nashandra is a Grim Reaper. Nashandra is a representation of death. So, what does that mean, then? What does death mean to us? Because this is the end of at least the base Dark Souls 2 game. You get to the Throne of Want, and your final opponent before you ascend that throne is a representation of death. Now, we've encountered death in Dark Souls 2 before, of course, approximately 204 times, actually. So one available, and I think valid reading of Nashandra is that before you can beat the game, you must finally overcome the greatest enemy that you've had throughout your entire playthrough, which is the "you died" screen. Or to put it another way, in order to beat Dark Souls 2, you have to finally get good. But death is more than just a reset to the nearest bonfire. Of course, death is also how you go hollow. Possessing souls, so we are told, is the only way to stave off the curse, and dying is how you lose them. Dying is how you step closer to succumbing to the curse. Now, back in episode 2 of this series, we discussed the Pursuer, this armor-wearing, giant sword-wielding lunatic that's pursuing us across Drang Lake, its very exterior bloated with the souls of its fallen victims. We discussed how the Pursuer can be read as a kind of dark mirror of the player themselves, both in terms of how its armor, at least superficially, resembles the elite knight armor, which is the iconic armor of Dark Souls, but also in terms of the tons of useless weapons it lugs around in its inventory but never uses, and in its single-minded determination to destroy you to the point where it will return from death multiple times to haunt you again and again when you least expect it. Now, I know, of course, that you encounter multiple Pursuers over your journey through Drang Lake, and not just the one showing up over and over again, but thematically, the Pursuer can act as a dark mirror to the player. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if there was another boss kind of like that? Another boss whose goals really aren't that dissimilar from your own. Another boss who has spent the entire game in relentless pursuit of souls and power for themselves. Nashandra is responsible for the hollowing of entire nations, both the land of the giants that we never get to see, admittedly, and Drang Lake itself. We have probably slain and hollowed a lot fewer people in the pursuit of our goals, but given enough time, and given an incentive to keep consuming souls to keep ourselves going, how high would our body count climb in the end? How different could we credibly claim to be? In our journey through Dark Souls 2, yes, we have overcome death, but for quite a lot of the people and things that we encountered, we have also been death. Nashandra, at least according to her soul, is a prisoner of desire. One more errant daughter of Manus, this one the tiniest and feeblest of them all, and therefore the most obsessed with gathering power to herself. This obsession with power made her the perfect complement and dark shadow to Vendrick's ambitions, a literal embodiment of the dark side of his quest for kingship and mastery over the soul. And once Vendrick was done, we took up that quest. We too set out to do, well, pretty much the same thing. And so it is perhaps appropriate that it's the same enemy that we ultimately have to face. And in destroying her, thus, we overcome not only like an embodiment of death, but also the critical character flaw that prevented Vendrick from ultimately taking the throne. We surpass and exceed him in our mastery of our own soul. Now, there are still, I think, a few unanswered questions about death and its place in Dark Souls 2, but those are going to have to wait for a little bit later. For now, let's turn our attention to the real final boss of this game, which is Aldia, the Scholar of the First Sin. We have already commented some on Aldia's character design. I've already pointed out that he is essentially just entirely ahead. This is of course appropriate for him because he is the Scholar of the First Sin, and when we visit his fortress we find there the lab of a consummate mad scientist. Aldia has gathered all manner of curiosities and species to his mansion, and as we find out through various item descriptions, conducts absolutely horrifying experiments on all of them, and even to any guests who happen to wander into his mansion when he's feeling particularly inquisitive. Aldia is responsible for the Forlorn that invade us throughout the game. He is also quite probably responsible for Man-Scorpion Tarkin, Scorpioness Nashka, and all of this inquisitiveness from Aldia is justified, at least in his mind, by the questions to which he's seeking answers. Those questions being, well, exactly the same ones that his brother was contemplating. The question of the curse and the fate of humanity. In the course of that pursuit, Aldia has sacrificed, as he puts it, everything. And every time Aldia confronts us, he confronts us not with answers, but with questions. Do you desire peace? Are you intent on shattering the yoke and spoiling this wonderful falsehood that we call life? What is it, young hollow, that you want? And so at the end, it is him that presents us with an alternate option. I happen to know that in the original version of Dark Souls 2, there was no opportunity to walk away from the throne. You defeat Nashandra and take your place on the throne of want. That is how the story goes. Aldia, then, presents himself as an interesting alternative to the obvious path. Rather than seek kingship and mastery over the soul in order to conquer the curse and take your place on the throne of want, Aldia offers you the opportunity to do something else. The opportunity to, rather than accept an answer, seek out another question. And so, again, his character design is appropriate. Aldia is a creature of the mind, but he's also more than that. Aldia isn't just a disembodied head, he's also a tangle. He is a mass, a mess of intertwined tree roots, tangled, reaching, and grasping in exactly the same manner as the chaos at Eleam Lois is looking to spread out his roots in search of more things to colonize. That tangle makes him inscrutable. It makes him hard to read. Indeed, it's kind of hard to tell what he even is when you meet him for the first time. It took me a while to figure out that he was even supposed to look like a head. Aldia is, in the most literal terms possible, not straightforward, and what he offers us is compelling, I must admit. It appeals to my intellectualism, and it appeals to my sense of self as an independent person, this thought of going off on our own to investigate questions that no one else has ever been bold enough to ask. Aldia's alternative very much appeals to my ego, another thing that tends to live in people's heads. But then I remember the mansion. I remember where Aldia's inquisitiveness took him, where his iconoclast individualism compelled him to go, and what it made him do to others. Aldia lives in his head. Aldia is only a head. He is quite literally heartless. And so for me, my answer to all of his questions is we came to Drang Lake for a cure for the curse. With a crown, you might argue we found it, but we didn't come here for this. We didn't come here to walk into a grave and burn. But we've seen what happens when you don't. When you choose to go on, and just go on, and go on, and go on. That's Aldia's choice right there. Vendrick tried to get to the throne and failed, partly because he was ensnared by Nashandra, by his own weaknesses. Aldia chose to go on forever. Exist forever. Be forever. And we've seen what it's done to him. It's not an easy choice to make, this. I mean, I suppose the third option would be to just roll over the edge and jump in the water. But that's no choice at all. I think you can argue for either course, as you could in Dark Souls 1. But from the moment we stepped into Drang Lake, shepherded into the world by 3 old women through a tall and narrow slit in the world, and emerged, blinking, baby-faced. This has been about a journey through life, taking on many roles, becoming many different people, and eventually, after struggle and pain and suffering, and good lord, so much suffering, becoming who we were meant to be, and in becoming, we must end. This is a grave, and for my character at least, it's time to let things come to an end. And finish it. Become a full person. I don't want to just go on. Things have to end.
You who link the fire. You who bear the curse. Once the fire is linked, souls will flourish anew, and all of this will play out again. It is your choice to embrace or renounce this. Great Sovereign, take your throne. What lies ahead, only you can see.
So, as the credits play, let's talk briefly about death. There's a quote that comes to mind. "Now as we keep our watch and wait the final day, count no man happy till he dies, free of pain at last." It's a quote from an ancient play by a playwright called Sophocles. You may have heard of it. It's called Oedipus Rex. Now, Oedipus is in modern times perhaps more famous for the specific thing that happened between him and his mother, shall we say. But the shocking causes of Oedipus's demise is really only one part of the play. The full quote that I took that little excerpt from is delivered by the chorus near the end of the play, when everything terrible that's going to happen to Oedipus has inevitably happened, and he's begging his brother-in-law, who's also his uncle Creon, to take care of his children and exile him from the city for the things that he has done. And as Creon gently does so, he says to Oedipus, still the king, the master of all things. No more. Here your power ends. None of your power follows you through life. And the chorus of the play then follows up with this. People of Thebes, my countrymen, look upon Oedipus. He solved the famous riddle with his brilliance. He rose to power, a man beyond all power. Who could behold his greatness without envy? Now, what a black sea of terror has overwhelmed him. Now, as we keep our watch and wait the final day, count no man happy till he dies, free of pain at last. The tragedy of Oedipus is that he was a great king. He's brought to his very lowest point by circumstances pretty much entirely out of his control. Despite all his desperate and sincere struggling to avoid the terrible fate that's been ordained for him, it comes crashing down on him anyway because fate cannot be circumvented. And so, despite all the things that he has been in life, an adventurer, a warrior, a savior of Thebes, and its king, he ends his life as a blind, maddened, tormented, exiled man, broken by the things that he has unwittingly done. Thus, count no man happy until he is dead. Because whoever you happen to be, however powerful, however great, however good, fate can take all of it away from you in an instant. Had Oedipus died when he was still king of Thebes, before he realized the depths of his tragedy, he would have died a happy man. He would have died a good king. He would have died a hero. Because only in death is your fate concluded. Now, you can find this thematic idea repeated a lot throughout culture. You may, for example, have heard the phrase,
"You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain."
Or perhaps you're acquainted with this little play that did moderately well on Broadway recently called Hamilton, which prominently features the line,
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight and Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton both offer takes on this idea of what makes a person who they are, and neither of them, I think, entirely disagree with Sophocles and Oedipus. All throughout, especially the early parts of my playthrough of Dark Souls 2, I was searching for a character to become. I experimented with different weapon types and different kinds of equipment. At one point, I entertained the idea of becoming a sword-wielding pyromancer. And even when the siren song of giant, wonderful ultra great swords became too much for me to handle, I still decided that, well, at least let's try and dual wield them with the power stance that's so unique to this game. And outside of just mere mechanical changes, the personal style of my character changed a lot too. Fashion Souls, it could be argued, is an entire game within the game itself. The players of Dark Souls take great pleasure in finding and combining interesting bits of gear and equipment to create a character that is fully and completely their own. And we've seen that multiple times in my playthrough as well. Remember that one person who came to help me in the Sunken City who was cosplaying as Callista from League of Legends? Remember how different and distinct all the people who helped me fight the Fume Knight were? Remember Polonium Man? Now, my personal character's aesthetics took a massive overhaul when I climbed into a coffin I found at the edge of a lake, expecting it to be a boat, and found that in fact it had taken me to the shores of a complete change of gender. And yes, RIP to my beautiful mustache, but it also made my character something really special. A character I had originally designed kind of jokingly to be Brom from League of Legends instead became this really unique, interesting thing that only could have happened in my particular playthrough. And Dark Souls 2 lets you change as much as you want forever. After a full playthrough of the game, just go to a bonfire and initiate New Game Plus. Anytime you're dissatisfied with your stat allocation or the things that your character is capable of doing, well, take a soul vessel to the old ladies near the start of the game, and you can have a whole new you. It's a game that's designed to let you change forever. And to be clear, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted my journey to end, at least through this game and this world. I wanted my character to become, to be, I wanted the person that they were to stay. I was happy with where I'd gotten to. I didn't need them to change anymore. So, there's two kinds of death in Dark Souls. There's the ordinary deaths that happen to you all the time when you get killed by various enemies or fall off various ledges. These deaths are cheap and plentiful and barely consequential, merely one more obstacle to overcome on your way to getting good. The other kind of death, though, matters, and it lasts. It's the death your character suffers when you stop playing the game. And you can stop because you get frustrated, because the PvP isn't to your liking, because you just don't have time, or because something about the mechanics just doesn't speak to you. Or you can stop because it's over. Because you took the journey and you followed it to the end. Because you walked into the kiln and ascended to the throne of want and saw there exactly what you wanted to see. Exactly who you wanted to be. And this, I think, is the meaning of kingship in this game. It is the act of becoming a full sovereign, not over the world, but over yourself. And so, in ending it, you cure yourself of the curse, because once you can no longer change, you can also no longer go hollow. You get to be who you are, who you have chosen to become. And you get to stay that person. And none of this means live fast, die young. In fact, it means exactly the opposite. It means go through New Game Plus as many times as it takes. It means spend every single soul vessel you can find, if that's what it takes. Because the objective here isn't to get to the throne as fast as possible, it's to be happy with the person that you finally let sit upon it. So keep going. Keep changing. Keep taking another swing at it. Hit that New Game Plus button one more time and figure out if maybe this time it's the one that sticks. Until you finally become someone that you can rest in. Someone that you can call home. That journey is never easy. And sometimes in order to finish it, you do have to get ready to get good. But as the Emerald Herald reminds us, there's more than one way to overcome the curse. With a little bit of luck, you'll have your own heralds who help you along the way. And with a little bit of kindness, maybe you can be a herald to someone who needs it. For all my talk of endings, there's still one thing left to do. Throughout this series, I've given you my particular hot take on Dark Souls 2, its themes, its meanings, and its ideas. You have heard the words personal identity more than any human being probably needs to hear that particular combination of syllables in a lifetime. But my hot take is, as ever, just one man's opinion. And if there is a broader point to this series beyond just waxing poetical about a video game I really like, it is that anyone can do this. I mean, maybe not record, write research, and edit together a whole Let's Play series with analysis segments and jokes and stuff. I hope that's a skill set that's relatively unique to me, at least. But anyone can analyze and understand a piece of media. It's not a skill or an activity that belongs only to people with expensive college educations. And I mean, I know I cited an ancient Greek play in this particular episode, but that's just my pretentiousness. A reading of a piece of work doesn't have to have any of that. That's just trappings. That's just aesthetics, really. All you really need, is the experience of something that had an impact on you, and a willingness to try and articulate it. And that reading doesn't have to be complex to be good. It doesn't have to cite a certain number of sources in order to be interesting. All it needs is to be authentic to you and your experience. And at that point, I promise you, you can enrich someone's life by sharing it with them. And so that's what I'd like to ask of all of you. Go into the comments, or, well, hit me up on my email if you prefer to do it that way, and tell me what Dark Souls 2 meant to you. And I mean this regardless of whether you personally played the game or watched Let's Plays on YouTube. So long as you have an experience of the game, that's fine. And then, by next week, I'll take a look at all of those readings and interpretations and put some of them, at least as many as I can manage, together for a video about your interpretations of this game. I've asked you to spend quite a lot of time listening to my opinion throughout this series, so I figure it's only fair that I turn around and listen to yours as well. Anyway, thank you all very much for coming with me on this little adventure through the Soulsborne games. This series has become one of my favorite creative things to work on, even though, as I complain about so often, they don't pull in the numbers. They sure do pull in some of the best comments and some of the most fun I have engaging with my community. So, you know, thank you all for that.